and accept that your body just can't keep up with the mind sometimes, and detach yourself from the outcome, in that your self-worth is not tied to the outcome of losing the weight. Your self-worth is not tied to your ability to go to the gym. We have today an interview with BuxBunnni, one of our community members. So welcome, Bucks.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm really happy to be on here.
Yeah, it's great. It's great seeing that handsome face finally putting a voice to that handsome face. So
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about today?
So I think part of the reason why I came on here is because one thing is that I love going to the gym, and obviously it's something that I really enjoy, and I've been really motivated to go to the gym and just like work out. But one thing that's kind of been troubling me is that I really don't know how to take a break. I feel like I always have to do more and more and more in the gym. And I feel like if I take a break, that's just gonna be like time wasted that could have been geared towards the gym. And sometimes when I do like a lot, my body starts to not break down, but like certain days where I just overexert myself, I get really tired. And when that happens, I can't do anything the next day because I do too much and my body's just like, nope, you gotta take a break. And so I don't know. I can't really take a break. I just have to do more.
Why do you have to do more?
I feel like I feel like I have to do more because I don't want to, I guess, fall behind. And I guess I kind of have certain expectations of myself a little bit
What are your
that I
expectations?
should, in terms of weightlifting,
Anything.
I feel like I have to do well in order to just and I have to do well in order to like meet my goals.
And just for completion's sake, can we hear what your goals are?
Um, so currently I'm trying to slim down. There's no like set weight that I want to hit. I've already hit my my goal weight, which is 175, and I'm maintaining that weight. So that's a goal that I hit and I'm really happy. But right now I'm just like trying to slim down. There's no like weight goal, but and I've definitely been able to see like a lot of progress when I'm trying to slim down. I feel like this has been like the slimmest I've ever been because before I used to be around 220, and now going from 220 to 175 is such a huge accomplishment for me. Something that I've never done before.
First of all, congrats. Like losing the weight, hitting
Thank you.
brand new, like, first time, never being able to slim down to this. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to ask more about is this theme of time wasted, falling behind. Um, when did you start feeling like you can't waste time? When did you start feeling like you can't fall behind?
I would definitely say probably around like high school because I went to a really, really competitive high school. Everyone had extracurricular activities, everyone took AP exams, everyone had tutors, everyone was like playing a sport. And so if like that put a lot of pressure on me to do well because the average person in my high school would like have straight A's. Well, I wouldn't say the average person, but the average people that I would hang around would have straight A's. So it feels like I kind of need to keep up with like the my environment in order to like stand out to colleges, if that makes sense.
Where did that pressure come from? The pressure to keep up?
Um, Pressure to keep up. I guess a lot of people in my school, they compared each other to other people. and I kind of fell into that. Like, you would hear someone get like 100%, you're like, oh wow, this person's smart, and like everyone is like trying to do well, and especially me coming from a East Asian household, I feel like I have to do everything perfectly.
How did that make you feel hearing about, friends getting 100%?
Well, during that time, I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. And it's like, okay, if that person can do it, then I can definitely do it. And so when I would like go back home, I would just study until like 2 in the morning.
Did you feel like you were falling behind whenever you heard they were getting 100%?
Um, yeah, a little bit. If I had good grades, but I've always felt like I had to do more than just do better than what I've already been doing, because I felt like what I've been doing wasn't enough. So I feel like I had to like kind of overcompensate in order to just to stand out.
I think for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you feel like you were falling behind before high school?
Before high school, no, not at all.
Okay, was it just? I'm just curious. Was it just with your classmates that you felt, the pressure in high school, or did it come from any other sources?
Do you mind if I think
Yeah,
about that
yeah,
for a
yeah.
second?
Of course.
No, I don't think so. I think it was mainly from school and like comparing to other classmates.
I get the sense that it is like a never-ending hamster wheel of comparisons where it's always you got to keep running on this hamster wheel and it's just never good enough. Always going to be having to keep going. Someone else always going to be doing better. And all those
Yeah,
comparisons seem like they're never ending.
yeah,
Does that resonate at
it's
all?
really yeah, it does. Especially in high school, people always doing so well. You have to keep up, and like and then the next day you hear like, oh, so and so got into Harvard, and you're like, okay, wow, how am I gonna keep compete with that?
How did you feel hearing other people getting into Harvard?
I really thought it was impressive. I didn't get into an Ivy League school. I tried my best to. So it definitely kind of hurt because I put so much effort into trying to go into a good school, but like it didn't happen.
What hurt about that?
Um, it's- it hurt because I put so much time and effort into like doing well in high school, and that me getting rejected is like, no, you're not good enough.
Have you felt not good enough before prior to high school?
Prior to high school, um, I mean, there's this one instance that I remember in high school where I felt that. Like, my chemistry teacher, so I went in for help, right? And I asked him help for a certain chemistry problem, and then like he taught me how to do that particular problem. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then he made a remark saying like, "Oh, you should have been able to do this. Like, what's wrong? Like, you know, this kind of problem is easy." And I'm like, "Wow, okay, that kind of hurt."
Wait, so you went into him like privately after like like office hours kind of thing when no one else is around? You asked him for
Yeah,
help. He gave you the help, but then he was like, "Bro, you should have been able to do this."
yeah. It's
Yeah.
like he was like, "This isn't that hard." Like, you know,
How did that make you feel?
oh, I remember it made me like kind of like I guess not nervous, but like a little bit upset because like I realized like that problem was like okay, it's on the easier side, so I kind of got frustrated with myself for not being able to solve the problem.
For not being good enough, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Bucks, are you good enough?
Now or
No.
before or now? Yeah, I definitely do think that I am.
Can you help me understand what's different now versus back then?
What's different now is that I definitely think that I have to attribute like my kind of like more optimistic view of life to my friends and like the people around me because I've learned a lot about like different people like and like what other people go through. And so having those kinds of friends, like they really value our friendship and I value our friendship and they showed me a lot about taught me a lot about self-worth. And I definitely think I have that now than when compared to like in high school.
Can you tell me more about your self worth?
Like what I learned.
Yeah.
So like what I learned is that a lot of my friends in high school, looking back at it now, I can definitely see that like a lot of people would compare each other to other people in terms of grades, grade point average, like their SAT scores. And I got caught up in that too. But it wasn't until I got into college where I met like so many different people from like so many different backgrounds that their grades, their SAT scores really didn't matter. And I kind of valued that and over like what other people's grades were. Because a lot of people have like a lot of different stories and like beliefs that you can learn from that aren't just solely based on grades and like SAT scores, you know?
Yeah. So bringing it back to feeling the need to push hard at the gym, because that's what this is. The original question is about that. And we got some, fun side tangents learning about you. And
Yeah.
uh, so let me bring it back to this. Why do you feel like you have to do more at the gym?
Because I don't want to fall behind. Because if I take a week off, then that's just wasted time and progress, or that time could have been used to make progress. And if I don't use that time properly, then I'm not gonna hit my goal.
How do you feel about the idea of wasting time, taking a week off from the gym?
Feels kind of rough. That's something that I don't want to do. And it makes me feel awful inside. And I could just, I don't know, I can feel my body just getting in bad shape if I don't do anything about it, you know?
So,
Like after,
good.
after like a day or two of not working out, I just feel like, okay, what am I doing? It's just like my body feels awful. And my my brain's like, okay, you have to go to the gym.
Let's step back from the body feeling awful. Let's rewind before the body feels awful. You you said that you don't want to miss the gym because if you do, you feel like you're falling behind, right? You have some it feels rough. I want to zoom in on that rough, not what happens after the feeling rough, but before that. Like I want to understand you. Tell me more about this feeling rough.
Feeling rough. I think before I lost all this weight, I definitely really felt terrible about myself. Just looking at myself in the mirror, like, wow, like you're big, you need to lose all this weight, and I wanted to like get rid of all this weight really fast, and so it's like during that time where I weighed like 220 pounds, I just felt awful. Like I could just feel like all the fat on me. It just felt like a terrible feeling.
Can you tell me more about that terrible feeling?
Um, like during that time, I definitely didn't feel confident in myself whatsoever. And like seeing other people like being fit and like having six pack abs and that comparison really deteriorated my self worth. And I'm just like, I have to do something about it. And that's when I kind of started to take the gym more seriously.
I want to ask you something. That feeling of deteriorating self-worth, the comparisons, does that negative feeling match the same type of feeling that you felt in high school, comparing yourself to other friends, hearing that they got into Harvard, stuff like that?
Yeah, it definitely felt very similar in that way. Yeah, it definitely feels very similar.
Because what I'm trying to suss out is a lot of times we have these negative emotions that we feel today have a genesis, a point where they started, usually in our younger developing years. And the hypothesis I'm forming here is in high school, you learned to compare yourself. You learned that to identify your self-worth through these comparisons, and that you had to do more. You started like this idea of falling behind and wasting time started then. And that I'm not getting the sense that it started before that. It was just in high school. That's when you start to get the sense of I'm falling behind. I can't let myself fall behind, driving you forward. It gets results, no doubt, right? I mean, you've lost,
Yeah.
40 plus pounds, right? If I'm doing the math right, it gets the results. Sometimes it's at the cost of damage to ourselves to drive ourselves forward to get these results. And I hypothesize that behavior is probably still carrying forward right now to you wanting to lose weight. That is, you use the negative emotions of looking at yourself in the mirror and you compare yourself and you use that to propel yourself forward. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, that definitely does kind of feel like that resonates with me. One thing that I don't do now is compare myself to others, but rather I compare myself to my own self. So if like yesterday I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, okay, I look good, but now when I look at myself in the mirror today and I don't look good, I'm gonna have that feeling like, okay, you don't look good. Let's go to the gym and just start working out.
When you don't feel good and you look at yourself in the mirror after like a day of not working out, do you feel so bad that you're basically going back to the same spot before, the same negative emotions of not good enough, falling behind, and you let me think for a second. You basically whip
Yeah, go
yourself.
ahead.
Are you basically whipping yourself back into the gym to not feel like how you
Yeah.
did before, right?
Yeah.
So here's the damning thing, because I know some people listening to this might be thinking like, isn't that a good thing? Yes, the results are good that it's getting you to go to the gym, But the unintended consequences is this being fueled by negative emotions, I think, has a decent chance of lasting damage. I was trying to come up with a good gaming analogy for this before, but I have a hard time with this. Can you think of, because I know you play games, right, Bucks?
Yeah.
Do you know of any games that do like self damage as like a skill tree? You spec into it and then you do self damage as a result of doing more damage.
In like League of Legends, there's like some characters that do self damage in order to deal damage.
Okay, like who? Can you tell me about one of them?
There's a character named Vladimir. Essentially, I don't know what kind of person he is, but he loses health in order to use an ability to deal damage, basically.
Yeah, it's so that type of I think negative emotions. We're basically dealing damage at the cost of our own health. We're achieving our objectives, but it's definitely, it could be considered unnecessary damage, is what I'm getting at. So
Yeah.
Self-worth. I'm noticing a discrepancy here. You're saying you feel good enough, right?
hmm
But in those moments when you don't go to the gym for a couple of days and you look at yourself in the mirror and you're feeling those negative emotions, are you good enough?
Yeah, but I can kind of feel that like past self when I don't feel good, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can you help me understand that some more?
So it's like I made so much progress and I don't want to go back to that feeling, and that feeling of like me being big and not unhealthy, just something that I didn't like about myself. And so whenever like I don't feel good by missing out on like a gym session, that feeling, it's like the same feeling, and it kind of reminds me of like my past self being at 220, and like I look at that, I'm like, oh no, I don't want to go there again.
Yeah. So here's like the healthy way, in my opinion, to walk this line. Beating yourself up and being fueled by negative emotions causes damage. It's just self-damaging. It gets results, but you're going to hurt yourself in the process. Because a lot of this time I was spending trying to suss out how you feel about yourself and the self-worth. And I'm getting that sense that you do have echoes from the past, bringing up your self-worth, the comparison, even though you're not comparing to anybody anymore. Originally you did with the high school stuff, with the six-pack stuff. And now it's comparing against your past self. Comparing against your past self to use it as, like, let's just say you're using it scientifically, like, oh, okay, this is how I used to look. I want to move this direction. There's no emotions there. There's detachment. It's fine to do that. But the problem is, what I'm hearing is you're using it as a weapon to whip yourself and beat yourself up and to feel yourself. And I think that is kind of the long-lasting issue. This is the problem that we have to zero in on, because it's causing lasting damage in a sense, right? Because you mentioned you're basically exerting yourself to the point where you're doing too much, you're too tired, overexerted, right?
Yeah.
I noticed your face was wincing a little bit as I was mentioning that. What were you thinking about?
Um. Well, I was thinking about like a certain time. This is kind of like related to this, but like a certain time. I would say like this even happened like a month ago, where I played basketball with friends for an hour and a half. Then after that, I still wanted to go to the gym, and I went to the gym. I worked out for another hour and a half. Then after that, I came back home and I played basketball again for another hour. And after that, I was just so exhausted.
So I'm curious. Thank you for that story. I love hearing stories like that. Um, what was going through your mind, or what were you feeling that made you keep going?
Um, Well, me not skipping out on the gym, I think is kind of fueled by that feeling of like that disgust of my past self. But also for the basketball, I've started to get into basketball recently, so this is mainly on me that like I want to get better at basketball. So yeah, that the basketball part is just mainly on my part. Like I actually wanted to do it. It wasn't fueled by anything else. But the gym part, yeah, I think that was definitely kind of fueled by like the disgust from my past self.
Let me ask you something, Bucks. Do you fear death?
Uh I don't the thought of it, yes, but if I were to come face to it, I would yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, it's a weird, strange question. Let me rephrase it.
Because that's something I don't really think about, so I don't know how to feel about it.
Okay, so yeah, it's a weird question. Let me rephrase it. Do you try to get the most out of life?
What do you mean by that?
Let me try to rephrase it a different way, because I'm probing right now. I'm trying to see if any of this like resonates with you. Do you fear dying one day having not done enough? Do you fear dying one day with a to-do list being unfinished?
Mm, can I think about this?
Yeah, of course.
Not particularly.
Okay, I mean that's fine. I'm trying to see if certain aspects resonate you, because some people are driven by this fear of never doing enough and overpacking their life to the point where they're like, breaking down. Sometimes that happens too, and I'm not getting that sense from you. I just was just probing around to see what's there. So overall, I think a lot of this, the way forward, in my mind, is you're going to have to kind of balance and tackle this. I think you've already made a lot of great progress by recognizing your self-worth, recognizing the comparison habits, and really moving towards recognizing the feeling, the whipping yourself, the comparisons, those negative feelings of the comparisons, recognizing that as it's happening and trying to balance that with the feeling of self-worth, that you are good enough. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely do think I need to make progress on that part because obviously I still have that like feeling of disgust and that me skipping out on the gym kind of definitely reminds me of that feeling. So I definitely need to work on that end of the yeah, I definitely need to work on that part of the of certain problems, I guess.
I just thought of something else actually. When you were overweight at 220 pounds, did you feel like you didn't do enough, and or you lost out on life, anything like that?
I definitely felt like at first whenever what like when I was trying to go on my like weight loss journey, I definitely feel like I wasn't doing enough in the gym because like I saw like very little like weight loss. So I'm like I'm not doing enough. I need to do more, you know? So that kind of like I guess is another aspect to it where I didn't see any like progress whatsoever. So I felt like, okay, I just need to do more and more and more.
I want to talk about the progress stuff. I want to get to some practical help towards the end to talk about progress, expectations, tracking, that kind of stuff. So I do want to get to that. Like, like we're doing a lot of emotional, psychological exploration here. And so towards the end, I want to make a note to myself to talk about progress, expectations. But I think one of the roads forward for you is going to be acceptance. That you have to accept a lack of progress. You have to accept plateauing and accept that your body just can't keep up with the mind sometimes, and detach yourself from the outcome, in that your self-worth is not tied to the outcome of losing the weight. Your self-worth is not tied to your ability to go to the gym. What do you think about that?
No, that makes a lot of sense.
It makes sense, but how do you feel about that?
I don't know where to begin or how to do that exactly.
Okay.
Is it, how,
I was just curious if any part of you was rejecting that, because sometimes people hear that, they're like, how am I gonna make progress if I, cut out the one thing that drove me forward? And my simple answer to that is, you could still do on paper practically the same stuff that you're doing. Obviously, you have to kind of dial back on the training a little bit and listen to your body if you're training too hard. But you could still do the same things of pushing hard. It's just the real goal is to accept that if you don't achieve some of these outcomes that you're going for, that's okay. If you have to take breaks sometimes, that's okay. And accepting yourself and your self-worth, realizing that these things don't define you, that is okay. And also, like, that's part of the battle. Like, that's the acceptance part. The other part is noticing where this comes from, being that all of these past patterns of comparison, that feeling, where does it come from? And it's coming from that one time where your friends got into Harvard, or your experiences in high school where other friends were getting straight A's and getting 100% and you weren't. And really recognizing that it's a part of your mind. The machinery in your brain is kicking off these programs, making you think that. And that self-worth aspect is like just noticing it and staring it down, like, oh, it's doing it again. Not necessarily judging, not necessarily beating yourself up, or because, like, that's another issue too. People beat themselves up when they do this. And that's kind of like, it's like popping up a new program that you have to squash and playing whack-a-mole there. But I think notice it, and then go back to the work that you've already done on the self-worth, that it's okay, and just accept it, that you're going to be fine.
yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of the emotions aspect of this, beating yourself up, things like that?
There's not too much. I was trying to think of something. I was thinking of something, but I forgot.
No worries. If it comes up later, let me know.
Okay.
So let's talk about some practical stuff now, about your goals, progress, expectations. So and how your body is breaking down. Can you tell me more about, like, how you're feeling exhausted, and what's your body doing when you're overexerted?
I definitely feel really sore, and even like trying to move my arm, or like just moving in general whenever I overexert myself, just feels awful. It's like my body is literally telling me to just rest and recover and just to chill out.
But what do you end up doing?
I, I play basketball, go to the gym.
So on a very practical note, like, as you start moving and going to play basketball, do things get better, or does it get worse?
At first it feels like a little bit like I do feel tired, but once I start to like get into it, that doesn't like cross my mind. It's just like that soreness, that like pain and like tiredness is just out of my body, it feels like. But then afterwards, after I'm done working out or after I'm done playing basketball, it comes back.
Does it come back worse?
Yeah, sometimes.
So are you breaking yourself down over the course of weeks to the point where you are so broken that you get to the point where you just literally cannot work out for some reason and you just have to take off a week?
Um, it's usually not a whole week, but just on like a particular day where I just want to do more. And after that day, the next day I just have to rest. I can't do anything else.
How is that day where you have to rest and you can't do anything else? How's that day different than the other days where you just push through it and go play basketball?
That day, I can actually feel my body just not functioning properly, and that doesn't feel good, and it feels like I'm gonna like, I don't know, break down. And at that time, I physically can't lift and I physically can't just play basketball. No matter how hard I try, it's just like too much.
Can you tell me like what gates you? Like, do you have a joint problem? Your muscles are cramping. What's stopping you?
Yeah, muscles do cramp. My muscles do get sore a lot after during that day of rest. And I can feel my joints start to ache a little bit. It's not too severe, but it's like my joints are feeling something.
Yeah. So when it comes to just general recovery, there's a couple of things I want to point out, which is paying attention to the big picture. Are you trending better or trending worse is really important to see if you're recovering enough. And in your case, it sounds like you're trending worse, where you push yourself so hard that you eventually just collapse and you physically can't do more. And that's a sign of, yeah, you're under recovered. Because if you just did, like, let's say you did a really good upper body day and the next day you wake up, you're really sore and tired and you want to rest, but you go play basketball and you kind of walk it off and you feel fine. And then your performance in general is not that hindered in either basketball or weightlifting. That could be okay, right? So that gets really tough to tease apart because sometimes like the human body really is capable of amazing things where we can really push hard. But to me, the red flags are if you have any joint problems and things are trending worse in the big picture and not trending better, and also if you're fueled by negative emotion. So that you are kind of fueled by negative emotion, and even when you push through it, sometimes you're okay, sometimes you're not, and so it starts to bite you. It starts to bite you back. So yeah, I do think you are probably pushing a little bit too hard, which then brings me to the goals. What are your goals over the next few weeks, few months, few years, stuff of that nature? Because we got to start trimming back what you cannot, like what's optional and what is a must have.
So currently my goal is to just slim down where I can, I guess, try to get six pack abs. I'm, I feel like this is the closest I've ever been. I can see like a little outline of my abs.
Nice.
So I feel like I'm definitely close. And then after that, I'm most likely gonna try to maintain that if possible.
Do you have the lighting just right? And then you can see like the upper
Y-
abs starting to poke through, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm starting to see that.
Yeah, buddy. That's how it starts. um, so, okay. So you want to lose weight. What about you want to get that six pack abs? Okay. What about strength? What about basketball? How does that fit in there?
In terms of strength, I'm fine at where I'm at in terms of strength. Obviously, I would like to become stronger, but if my strength is stays where it's at right now while I'm losing weight, I'm completely fine with that. There may be a point where I may want to focus on strength more after I slim down, but as of now, strength is not a huge concern for
Okay.
me.
That's good to know because
And
a lot of times people forget that you can't have it all. You got to kind of prioritize things, especially, you have to kind of like take your turn on cutting versus bulking and so forth. Sorry, I interrupted. You were about to go.
And in terms of basketball, that I'm just trying to learn more about playing basketball, like new techniques and stuff like that, new moves, having a better jump shot, like being able to do proper layups and stuff like that. So it's nothing, I guess, too serious. I just have fun with basketball and with friends. So that in terms of basketball, that's just mainly for fun, and I just want to get decently good at it. Nothing too like extreme.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is you get some skill acquisition at it, and you're having fun. Just one of those things of just self improvement and being able to socialize with friends, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, what are you currently doing for your workouts? Just, roughly speaking, in a week, what do you do for lifting, volume, how many reps and sets, that kind of stuff?
Um, I th- so for the first okay, let's just say that today is my first gym day of the week, right? So the first gym day is typically deadlifts and overhead press and accessory workouts. For deadlifts, I kind of go somewhat intense. I go for like either a 3x3, 4x3, or 3x4. At I'm not sure what percent of my 1 rep max, but the weight that I do for deadlifts is currently at 335 for a 3x3 or 3x4. Overhead press, I do. Hold on, I'm trying to think. I'm blanking out.
I'd say approximates are
One
fine
one.
too.
Oh, for overhead press, I do 155 for 3x3 or 4x3, and so that's the first day. Next day, I do squat and bench. Squat, I do about like two 295 for 3x3 or 4x3. Bench, I do 235, 240 for 3x3 or 4x3, something like that. And then after that, I do accessories. And then the next day is a rest day for me. And then after that rest day, it's just I repeat again.
Okay. So, let me repeat back what I'm hearing. You're basically doing 4 days a week, and you're doing a mix of compound lifts first at the beginning of the at the beginning of the day, either like deadlift, overhead press, bench, or squat. Those are your main compounds, and you do some accessories afterward. Does that sound about right? Does that summarize it?
Yeah, yeah.
So for the accessories, what just a quick rundown of roughly how many sets do you do of accessories per of those or for each of those days after your compounds are done?
Uh, Normally like a 3x8, 4x8, or a 3x10. That's like the normal rep scheme of my accessories.
And how many how many accessory exercises do you do after your compound lifts?
Uh, Let me think about that.
Mhm.
Depending on time, I do anywhere from like 3 to 5, 3 to 6 accessory lifts.
So let me make sure I understand this. So on a like Monday, you would do 3 sets, 4 sets of deadlift, 3 or 4 sets of overhead press. If you do 3 to 6 exercises of accessories after that, where each one of those exercises you're doing 3 or 4 sets.
Normally it's 3. 4, I don't go to 4 most
Okay,
of the
so
time.
so
Normally
to
it's
just
3.
spell it out, like some days you're doing up to 6 exercises, 3 sets each of accessory on top of your compound lifts. So a total of like 22 sets, 24 sets, somewhere around there in a day. If you add up all the sets for all the
Um,
exercises.
Well, I did say depending on time. So depending
Okay.
on time, normally I don't get to 6 or even 5. I get to 3 or 4
Okay. Okay. All right.
most of the time. Most of the time.
I just want to make sure I have an accurate picture of how much volume you're doing, because here's what I would suggest for you. The goal is to lose weight, basically cut. You want to do a cut, preserve muscle, lose fat, and you got to sacrifice some stuff. Volume is usually one of the first things to go, reps and sets. So strength, I think you've already come to a place of acceptance that strength is probably not going to increase, might decrease. So deadlifting heavy and squatting heavy in a deficit can be very taxing on the body and for recovery. So a couple of suggestions here. One is you might want to consider doing back off sets. So you do one heavy set for deadlifts or squats, and then the next 2 or 3 sets afterward are at a lighter weight. And when I say lighter weight, I mean perhaps you cut the intensity by 5%, 10%, 20%, or whatever the weight is, by 5, 10, 20%, and see how that feels for recovery. Because to preserve the muscle, you could preserve the muscle with much less training volume. You just got to keep the intensity high. So keep lifting heavy. One top set and then a couple back off sets could do the trick to help balance the recovery. Same with the accessories. I would consider starting to chop out accessories to just minimal accessories for whatever muscle groups. Hit all the main muscle groups you care about. And then start cutting down accessories wherever you can. See what that does for your recovery. Be a scientist about this. I really recommend the outlook of being a scientist when it comes to your performance and your recovery, your results, because scientists in the way I view it is I am detached from the outcome. It is not me. I'm in a lab doing a scientific experiment. Yeah, it's my body, but I am changing the doses. I like the real me. I am detached from my body in that I'm in a lab and I'm just like titrating things up and down, titrating up the volume, the dosage of the exercise, the activity, and see what the results are. Oh, okay, I'm probably under recovered, so I need to dial back the volume, increase sleep, that kind of stuff. Oh, okay, I'm not losing weight at the rate I would expect. Okay, let's dial up the activity, decrease the calories, and see what the results get us. No negative emotions, no whipping myself if I didn't achieve what I was hoping to achieve. That's just not there in my mind. I'm just like, okay, all right, well, let's go back to the drawing board and let's experiment some more. And so this is the kind of self-experimentation you might want to do with your training volume. You're a young guy. You're like, what were you like? You're 20, right? So
yeah, 20.
Recovery probably through the roof. That's why, for those wondering, his volume may sound insane, but he's also 20. And when you're 20, your recovery can be through the roof. So you may be able to ride this way better than I could, because I would not be. I'm 35. I would be so broken trying to do what you're doing. And so at the end of the day, this is kind of the balance that you're gonna have to figure out. Your bucket, your stress cup, can only have so much. If it starts to overflow, you're gonna be breaking down in a very similar way of what you're seeing, where you just can't get up, you can't move. So the goal is start emptying the bucket of things that you just don't need. Things you don't need would be switching over to back off sets to reduce the intensity and volume, reducing some accessory work. And then for the basketball, it sounds to me like the basketball is pretty important to you to keep in there. What's kind of like your minimum requirement for days per week and amount of time you spend doing basketball?
Typically I just play basketball for like 1 hour is the average.
And how many days per week?
If it's with friends, probably 1 or 2 days a week. But if it's just by myself, it's normally on my rest days, even though I should be resting. But yeah, either on rest days or on days where I don't feel bad.
So basketball can basically be your form of cardio. It's a lot like steady state cardio or HIIT cardio, depending on how you're treating it. And so it can be okay. Like, you're not doing extra cardio outside of this, right?
No, just basketball.
Yeah. So from the goal of trying to lose weight, this is your cardio and this is an extra calorie burn. And it is not. It could still fit in there. Even on your rest days, you can still make it work, especially because your recovery is probably extra good right now being 20. So it's going to come down to, you're going to have to do some self-experimentation with, dialing back volume here and there, dialing back the basketball. It's seeing how you feel. There's no clear, easy answer for this other than just some of the parameters that I gave to make this fit for your goals, for your cut. Keep losing the weight, keeping in some skill acquisition and practicing for basketball, socializing with your friends. And again, having that detached outlook that this is not the real you. This is not your self-worth. This is you doing some experiments, having some fun, trying to progress forward, but not beating yourself up with that shame and whatnot. So, what do you think about all that? Do you have any questions, comments, thoughts?
One thing another thing that I do want to talk about is sometimes, like, even after like a intense lifting session, I'm not sure if it's because I'm young, but like the day after I feel completely fine.
So
Is there a
help me
reason
understand
to
that.
that, or
Help me understand that, because earlier I was hearing that you would after doing too much, you feel too tired, exhausted, like you're breaking down. But then sometimes you feel okay.
With the lifting session by itself, I feel fine, but when I add basketball on top of that, that's when it starts to become too much for me.
Okay. I'm just curious, on the flip side, if you just did basketball only, how do you feel then?
I feel fine.
Okay.
But it's only on days where I do lifting and on top of that basketball.
So to answer your question about you feel fine after lifting, your question was basically, is it just because I'm young, or is something wrong? Like, am I not doing enough for the lifting volume, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
My answer to you is, actually, what do you think before I talk about it?
Well, the addition of basketball, it seems like it's just too much for me on that particular day. I feel like in terms of just doing the lifting by itself, I feel fine. So I think maybe on days where I am lifting, I should exclude basketball and only have basketball as or play basketball on my rest days.
Yeah, that's pretty much
Okay.
exactly what I'm thinking. Because you're young, you can handle more recovery. Just to draw a comparison for me, I am pretty broken, and I'm not resilient. I get injured and tired very easily. So to put my training volume out there right now, I'm doing the Beyond Bigger, Leaner, Stronger program by !Legion. Oh wow, hashtag sponsored by Legion. I'm doing their intermediate training program, which is basically just weekly undulating periodization. That's a fancy way of saying I go months of slowly ramping up volume. And Monday through Friday, I am doing roughly 12 to 16 sets total per day, slightly more upper body focused on arms and shoulders, but still doing a little bit of squats, deadlift, and bench. I would say just a couple sets of those each per week. So not particularly hard, a lot of accessory lifts. And I'm in a calorie deficit right now. I am cutting, and I am, walking 4 to 8 miles per day, roughly. And man, I am freaking beat. I can barely handle this. I'm sleeping 9 to 10 hours a night. I'm still waking up like tired and sore, and wish I had more food because I'm cutting, but I can barely tolerate this. Any kind of serious cardio would probably just tank me. So I probably shouldn't be drawing comparisons here because we're just talking about comparisons. But by comparison, dude, you're doing great, and it makes sense because you're younger, you can recover more. So I think what you're describing is pretty normal, that you could probably handle even more weightlifting if you had zero basketball. That does not sound uncommon to me for younger men, like late teenage or early 20s. So it's going to come down to just understanding what your limits are and kind of learning what you can do and what you can't do. If the basketball stacked on top of weightlifting is too much, you just got to make a decision. Should I cut out some training volume in order to do the basketball and be able to recover? Or should I cut out the basketball and just focus on the weightlifting? That's completely up to you, because I see benefits to both. If I were to cut out some weightlifting, but do the basketball because your friends are going to be there, you want to hang out with them, I would switch to cutting all the volume, all the sets in half, cutting out perhaps some of the later sets of the accessory stuff that may not be necessary, and starting off with probably just really focusing on top sets and back off sets, that kind of scheme. So that would probably try that out, see if that makes a huge difference, because I would guess it would make a noticeable difference if you're deadlifting. Let's say you were doing 3x3, like 330 pounds is what you said before you're doing, right? Something around there. If you did the first set of 330 for 3 reps, and then just one back off set at like 200 pounds, 250 pounds, not high volume, just maybe 3 or 5 reps, just to build up some skill. It's going to feel super light and super easy, and just do that and see how that changes things. Because the goal would be that the next deadlifting session, you didn't lose anything. You didn't really progress, but you didn't lose any strength on the next deadlifting session, like the week later. And also the next day after basketball, you feel fine. You wake up feeling recovered. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I feel like that's something that sounds suitable and definitely doable and definitely manageable as well.
Okay.
I'm not opposed.
All right. And so the progress and expectations here, one thing I wanted to touch on is you should expect to lose some strength. You should hopefully be losing weight, and you're going to have to kind of be dialing things in. When people are trying to lose weight, the expectation, there's a lot of self-shame and a lot of negative emotions when it comes to plateauing and or gaining weight during a cut. Do you experience any of that?
Plateauing? Or
yeah, negative emotions associated with if you plateau on weight loss or if you are even gaining weight.
I would say probably like a few months ago, I kind of did plateau a little bit. And yeah, that negative feeling, like negative emotions did kind of kick in, like, oh, you should be losing weight or you should be doing more in order to lose weight. But now I think I broke through that plateau and now I'm starting to lose more weight.
When, how long was that plateau?
I would say probably like 2-3 weeks. About.
Okay. So about 2 or 3 weeks plateaued, and then eventually the weight kept coming off, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds about right. Most people, I say, for the plateaus, if you were losing weight for a while and you have lost a lot of weight already, give yourself at least 3 or 4 weeks to see if the plateau resolves itself. So during those couple of weeks, I know it can be hell looking at the scale and be like, why isn't the scale moving? I'm doing everything right. Like, I know I'm tracking my food correctly. Yeah. It can be hell looking at that, but you have to understand, like, this is the part I wanted to touch on about setting expectations. Expectations should be set to, if you've already lost a lot of weight, like at least 10% of your body weight, the expectations should be set to, I would expect plateaus to last up to 3 or 4 weeks. And that's normal, and accept it, and that you're not doing anything wrong in that case. Only after 3 or 4 weeks, then I wouldn't say beat yourself up, but then I would say, okay, let's like really audit ourselves and zoom in on what we're doing to make sure it's actually accurate. Am I actually doing enough when it comes to the activity, losing, tracking calories, that kind of stuff? I have an infographic I'm going to flash on screen here about plateauing. And this has to do with refeeds. So anybody in chat, type !refeed in the Twitch channel. If you're listening to this on YouTube or as a podcast, go to twitch.tv/TominationTime and type in !refeed in the chat, and you'll see some information about a refeed. This infographic, I will probably link this eventually on there. And I'll probably put it on my Instagram, actually. So if you go to my @TominationTime for the Instagram, I'm going to post this. And It's just my weight loss plateau troubleshooting. And I'll just describe it out loud, which is basically the first step is if you're plateaued, have you been tracking your calories? Are you tracking food? Do you know how much you're eating? If the answer is no, then start tracking. Give yourself at least 4 weeks. Okay, you've been tracking fairly strictly for 4 weeks. Okay, how much, and you're still plateaued. All right, fine. How much weight have you lost from the starting weight? If you're less than 10% down from your body weight, so like let's say you, in Bux's case, start at 220, and 10% of that would be about, 20 pounds. So if you're still less than 20 pounds down from where you started, just continue to decrease calories, increase activity, and track carefully. If you're somewhere between 10 to 20% down, then we gotta start asking ourselves, are you way hungrier? Are you way more fatigued than you first started? Are you way under recovered? That's another way to look at this. You can't handle as much as you used to. If yes, you gotta start considering doing refeeds. And then you gotta ask yourself if you did any diet breaks. Did you do diet breaks where you basically stopped trying to be in a calorie deficit? You had maintenance or more, even a little mini bulk for at least 2 weeks. Because then that'll change the outcome. So basically, if you're 10 to 20% down, you're getting pretty hungry and you haven't taken a diet break, then maybe just 1 refeed per week. If you have taken a diet break, then 1 refeed per week. If you have not taken a diet break, then you should start refeeding once or twice per week. Or if you're more than 20% down from your body weight, consider refeeding once or twice per week. So there's a little bit more edits that need to happen to this infographic, but it will eventually get posted onto the to Instagram and in other places. But that's, in a nutshell, some of the expectations for plateauing and how I would handle that if I were you. Does that help at all, Bucks?
Yeah. One thing that I do have a question. Would a cheat meal be considered a refeed day, or
It
how's that?
can. It can if you have, they're kind of like it's like a Venn diagram. There is overlap between a cheat meal and a refeed day. Let's change it to cheat day versus refeed day. A cheat day is usually an uncontrolled amount of food or calories, unplanned, and kind of just go wild. And so a cheat day is usually going to be at least maintenance calories, sometimes an insane surplus of thousands of calories over your maintenance amount. Now, a cheat, so that's a cheat day. Basically, it could be maintenance. It could be super high calories. A refeed day is a planned and controlled maintenance calorie day, where it's the macronutrients are specifically high carb, low fat, and moderate protein or your normal protein. That's a refeed day. So maintenance calories, high carb, moderate protein, low fat. And that's kind of the difference. So if your cheat day, there's some overlap to it. If your cheat day is just a moderate surplus, a controlled surplus of maybe just a few, either zero calories over your maintenance or 1,000 calories over your maintenance, and it's high carb and relatively low fat, there's overlap there, and that can be a productive cheat day. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
So an example of doing a cheat day wrong would be a pizza day, a big pizza day. I saw that in chat. Someone mentioned pizza day, or a lot of pizza, because pizza is very high fat. And so that's going to be kind of counterproductive. But if you were to do an all-you-can-eat pancake house, pancakes, for the most part, are mostly just carbs. Plus, if you add syrup, that's more carbs. That's kind of a better focused refeed / cheat day. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I see. But in terms of diet, I think I have that decently controlled. Usually on weekends, that's when I do eat a little bit more. But throughout the week, I just stick to my normal diet. But during the weekends, I do eat more, tend to eat more. I guess
So,
that's considered my refeed day.
yeah. What are you usually eating on those days?
On the refeed days or just throughout
Weekends?
my normal day? Oh, weekends? Okay. I'm not exactly sure. I just eat more.
So if you're plateauing, I would zoom in on that because
Okay.
I can relate to this 100% because I'm cutting. I've been cutting and bulking. I've been at this enough times that um, I don't track that much unless I am plateauing, and then I'll start zooming in. But I usually know where I'm screwing up, and I know where I'm eating too much, and that's going to be typically on the weekends because that's when I'm like hanging out with
Yeah.
Helen. We're going out to restaurants, stuff like that. I like to drink alcohol, and I'll try to time my alcohol more on the weekends. So that's worthless calories. I mean, it's fun calories, but it's still really not necessary. And so, if I'm plateauing, I'm like, all right, fine. I really should, get more serious. I start trimming back everywhere. So I start cutting out like the glass of wine per day to just, carbonated water. For my daily drink, if you will, carbonated water instead of wine. And then on the weekends, I will, cut back on how much I'm eating. I'll do more intermittent fasting in terms of skipping breakfast or doing much smaller meals and focusing my calories towards the fun meal of the day, usually dinner on a Friday, Saturday night, where I will be hanging out with my wife, Helen. We're playing games on stream, having some drinks. And so that way it kind of blunts the impact. But I still know that if I'm plateauing for too long, I have to zero in on this, and I know the high calorie spots. But I know this from experience. People who don't have the experience with that, and they're not really sure. And if you're plateauing, I would definitely look at the weekends, which it sounds like on the weekends, Bucks. That's the there's your problem, and start tracking that more carefully.
Okay.
Do you think that would help?
Yeah, I definitely do think that would help, especially because I don't think I know how to do a proper refeed day. So me just eating whatever I kind of want on the weekend is probably not a good idea.
So let me ask you, are there any parameters to you eating on the weekend in terms of you have to do a family meal? You're always going out with friends on a Saturday night, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's kind of situational. If like my family has like dinner plans or if friends want to go out, then it's kind of situational. So normally with whenever I go out with friends, I we typically have Korean barbecue. So that has a lot of meat in it,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of protein. And in terms of family dinners, it's typically what my parents want to cook. Because on a typical weekend, family dinner weekend, they actually started to do something new, which is like cook new and different types of foods. So that is that is a lot of uncertainty on what I'm gonna eat that day. So for family dinners, I really don't know what we're gonna eat.
Okay.
But
So
in terms of in terms of like going out with friends, it's almost always gonna be Korean barbecue.
is it all you can eat too?
Yeah,
Yeah,
all
that's
you
the
can eat.
best. Oh man, I love it. So, my suggestion is if you're going to do that, the productive way to turn those meals into um, basically an impromptu refeed day, or at least try to steer towards that direction, would be to focus on carbing up and choosing lower fat options. So, Korean barbecue, I'm also a huge fan. Korean barbecue, all you can eat. Um, so, on those days, I would intermittent fast as much as possible and save all your calories for the all you can eat and enjoy yourself. But while you're doing that, I would focus on carbing up a bit. So like the Korean side dishes, like what are the high carb Korean side dishes? Rice, if there is rice. Duk, the rice paper, that's basically carbs. I love duk.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also I don't know if you do the potatoes. The potato salad is actually it depends what's in it, but that's generally carby. Were you gonna say
Yeah.
something?
I mean, certain I'm I'm pretty sure all the Korean barbecue restaurants I do go to always has rice. And so I guess I could just load up on rice.
Yeah, I would include more rice. There is the what else for the carby stuff? I was gonna say something else. I forgot, but The vegetables too, right? All the side dishes. Oh, samjang. Do you like samjang, the soybean paste?
Yeah, yeah.
Samjang is like pure carbs, man. I love samjang.
Okay.
So samjang with the duck, the rice paper. So you got soybean paste with the meat and the rice paper. That's just carbs on top of the meat. And then choose lower fat stuff. So like the pork belly, the beef belly, I would probably stay away from those for the most part. We still enjoy it, but I would load up on the leaner meats, which, come to think of it, I'm not sure what lean meats. I mean, like most, because what do you usually get? Like pork, pork and beef.
Yeah, pork, beef, sometimes chicken.
Yeah, but it's Korean barbecue. Come on, who gets the chicken at Korean barbecue, right?
Yeah, that's
true.
That's true.
Who's that guy who's ordering chicken at the all-you-can-eat Korean barbecue? But you're right though. Chicken, jokes aside, chicken is going to be leaner. But I wouldn't punish yourself with chicken and like suffer. You still enjoy it. Yeah. Just change up which ones you're getting a little bit and make it still enjoyable. I think brisket, depending on the cut, can be a little bit leaner. If they have like sirloin steak and you just cut off the fat when you're ready to eat it, those are examples of how to do it. Bulgogi, I can't remember. Bulgogi is like the marinated meat. I've never seen bulgogi when it's pre-marinated, so I actually don't know how fatty it is. Do you have any idea how fatty bulgogi is?
No, I don't. I think depending on, I guess, the restaurant. Some restaurants use a certain cut of meat, and some restaurants, if they're cheap or if they're cheap, depending on how good the restaurant is, sometimes they use a certain cut of meat, and some other restaurants use a different cut of meat. So that kind of depends.
I see. So just as something to pay a little bit of attention to see generally what meats do you enjoy that are leaner, and just try to target those. Also, I would say for the side dishes, don't forget also like kimchi and the pickled cucumbers. I love those. Those are practically 0 calories. Tastes great, right? So you load up on that stuff. And that's kind of it. Like the dipping, if you ever dip it, I would avoid dipping it in the sesame oil. I'm not sure if you do that, but like dip it in like the hot sauce or the soy sauce, for example, if you do it in a dipping. So those are basically 0 calorie sauces versus the oil, which would be super fatty. So this is a way to enjoy your Korean barbecue meal and minimize the progress and kind of make it or minimize the hindrance on your progress and still make it enjoyable. Same with eating with your family. If they cook whatever, just try to identify, just learn where are the starchy carbs, where are the non-starchy carbs, like just vegetables, the fruits, that kind of stuff. Where are like the high fat pieces of food. Because again, the goal for a refeed is try to minimize fat and increase carbs. Someone else was asking in chat about the why I mentioned carbonated water earlier. For me personally, at the end of a day, I like to have some sort of enjoyable drink. It's just kind of like a habit or a ritual for me. And so if it's non-alcohol, because I like to have like a drink at the end of the day, like when I'm done working, so I just relax hard. I work hard so that I relax hard at the end of the day. And if it's not like a glass of wine or a beer or something like that, then I like to have something kind of fun. And so just a carbonated water is kind of fun for my palate to just sip on it because it's sparkly, has a little bit of flavor. And it's also filling. Carbonated water is filling because it's 0 calories and it creates pressure because of the gas. Fills up the stomach a little bit. So that's why I choose that. Anyway, what other questions do you have or comments or thoughts about anything?
For the refeed, is there any reason why you want a more high carb intake versus like protein or anything else?
Yes. Carbs is in exclamation mark refeed or tominationtime.com/refeed. I kind of go over the science behind it a little bit, which is carbs are going to be the most productive thing in the short term to help offset the impacts of long-term weight loss. So as we lose weight, there's basically there's a lot of hormones involved, but 2 of the main hormones I'm going to focus on is leptin and insulin. So leptin is kind of a long-term hormone that measures overall energy status over the course of months or years, where high leptin signals high energy status, and it tells the body we are not going to starve to death, everything's good, let's keep going. When leptin goes down, or when we've been losing weight for a long period of time or been at calorie deficit for a long period of time, leptin starts to go down. This signals to the body, hey, energy status is low, let's start dialing things back. We might be going to a period of starvation or famine. Let's reduce. Let's start reducing activity. Let's start reducing drive, energy, motivation to do more exercise. Let's start getting lazier. It starts signaling to the brain, we got to start conserving energy wherever we can. And so this hits people where they start getting way hungrier than usual. They start getting way more fatigued than usual. Their exercise sucks. Their quality of exercise sucks, all that stuff. So that's a sign of leptin going down. And sometimes we want to bring that back up. Is everything okay on your end, by the way?
Yeah, my mom just popped in, but I
Okay.
think everything should be fine.
Okay, I'm just curious if there's any time constraints, then just let me know. But leptin, one way we can spike leptin or bring it back up. So bringing up leptin again is a way to kind of stave off those impacts of long-term weight loss, where you start to get hungrier, brain fog, all that stuff. So one way to spike leptin and bring it back up is through refeeds. Refeeds, carbohydrate status, it spikes. It's one of the best ways to bring up insulin, and that is one of the best ways to signal to leptin that, hey, we're actually not starving to death. We're gonna be okay. And so carbohydrates, a high carb day, such as a refeed day, is one way to do this. Now, I do want to emphasize, the science is not, it's only weakly supportive that high carb days, like refeed days, will offset leptin and kind of reset it. It is temporary. It doesn't last that long. So I do want to point that out, that because some people who know the science on refeeds and leptins, I will say that refeeds have been over-marketed, overhyped in terms of its ability to bring up leptin. It does bring up leptin, but it's not life-changing. However, I do think there's additional benefits to the high carb days, which is replenishes glycogen. If you are carb depleted because you're pushing hard with basketball cardio and you're pushing hard with weightlifting on a regular basis on a calorie deficit, you could probably use some carb. You might be carb depleted and could really use the refueling from the carbs. And so a lot of times we'll feel the day after the refeed, it's going to feel magical. You feel so much better, so much higher energy, and your lifts, your performance across the board is going to be so much better. And of course, it'll start to dip again after, a couple days have passed from the refeed. And the last thing is, man, psychologically, it can feel so damn good to be stuffed, especially stuffed on carbs. So I don't know the mechanisms in place, and I hypothesize there are mechanisms going on that we don't know yet, where we, by stuffing ourselves, is signaling to the body to rest, relax, enjoy, we're going to be okay, and kind of offset some of this. Again, that's just my hypothesis. I don't think there's been any clear studies showing this. But in my coaching experience, in my personal experience, man, refeeds are psychologically wonderful. If you hit 400 grams of carbs in a day after being at a prolonged deficit, you feel so good. Like, try it sometime. Try it to actually plan out the refeed day where you actually track the food ahead of time. You plan out how many carbs you're going to have and try to hit like 400 plus carbs, 400 grams of carbs or more, like 500 grams of carbs. You are stuffed out of your mind, and man, it feels so good.
Honestly, I don't think I could eat that much, because going on like a intermittent fasting kind of just like shrunk my stomach. So it's actually harder to like eat that much food for me, at least.
And that feeling of stuffing yourself on carbs, try it out and see how you feel. Report back, please. See if it actually does make that kind of difference and you feel it. Because whenever I do refeeds, I could kind of use one these days. But whenever I do that, it is, man, it does feel magical when I plan it out. Because I'm doing like pancakes with syrup. I do like a protein shake with like pancakes and syrup in the morning. And then lunch would be like a rice-based dish, or like I'll do like chili with a lot of potatoes, extra potatoes. And then dinner would be, I don't know, I'm having brain fog right now because I'm also cutting. And so like cutting brain is real. But it's basically super carby. I like extra fruit, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Sounds
anyway.
good.
Yeah. So what other questions or comments, thoughts?
I don't think I have too much on it. Yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay. All right, man. Anyone in chat have any questions or comments for Bucks before we wrap up?
Is this where I can look at chat now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Shintarian says, I don't want to ask Bucks anything. I just want to say he is awesome, and he should give himself a break. He more than deserves it. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Bucks, do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to plug? Are you streaming? I've seen you stream sometimes.
Yeah, I do stream. I mainly stream for friends, but anyone else is welcome to join. My Twitch is twitch.tv/BuxBunnni with 3 N's.
So
I try to get 2 N's, but
it's
BUX.
wait, really? Oh yeah, you're right. It is
yeah,
3. Okay, so let me do it again. BuxBunnni. 3 N's.
Yeah.
Okay, just gotta make sure I got it right. And if anyone's watching the video, you can see his name right below there in the Q&A box. So awesome, BuxBunnni, gonna shoot you a follow now, and come heckle you during your streams. I mean, say hi during your streams. So
yeah, I mainly play Valorant and Apex Legends, so you're gonna see me playing those most of the time.
Nice. Well, I'll be sure to stop by. So that's I guess that wraps up everything. So Bucks, thanks for coming by, man. Appreciate you opening up and sharing all this. I hope this was helpful.
Yeah, it was. I get a lot of good insight onto like dieting and working out that I didn't even think of. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Can you help me before we go? Can you help us understand what in particular stood out to you and or was helpful, or your takeaways?
Normally I feel like my workouts are pretty much the same. The only thing that changes is the weight. I didn't really think of having like a top set and backing off, having like a set, the rest of the sets where I back off to a lower weight. Or in terms of diet, I didn't think about I knew you talk about refeed days, but I really didn't know how to properly do a refeed day. But now I know how to. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And one more thing on the Korean barbecue thing is it's inevitable. Like your fat is gonna blow out. Like you're gonna have way more fat than you probably want. Like an ideal refeed day would be like less than 40 grams of fat. Like 20 grams of fat or less would be like the ideal refeed day, which is almost impossible to do, practically speaking. And so on a all you can eat Korean barbecue day, dude, your fat's probably gonna be like 50, 100 grams easily, which is a bit much. But at least you can hopefully carb up a bit, and that can at least get some of the benefits there. So, okay. All right, Bucks, thanks again for coming by, and have a good one.
All right. Thanks for having me.
If you like the content, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Also, follow us on Twitch and leave the notifications on. Feed your brain, feed your body, and see you next time.